"Baby, could you please tell me where I'm supposed to go, if nobody here will look my way?" The old woman's voice was soft, but it cut through the busy noise of the downtown law office like a bell. Phones rang, heels clicked on tile, suits moved past in a blur, but not one person had stopped by the time she finished her sentence. She sat on the edge of a steel blue chair in the lobby, her thin brown hands folded over the worn handle of her cane, a canvas tote at her feet. Behind the big white marble desk, the young receptionist barely glanced up from her screen. "Ma'am, if you're here for janitorial, you need the service elevator in the back," she said, pointing without looking. The old woman blinked behind her glasses. "No, sugar," she said quietly. "I got an app appointment, F4 3 o'clock, with Mr. Pierce." The name came out halting but clear. At the sound of Mr. Pierce, a few heads turned. Logan Pierce was the man whose name was on the wall in silver letters, Pierce and Lamont, attorneys. He handled the big deals in Chicago, the kind that got written up in business magazines and made mayors smile for cameras. Still, the receptionist's eyes slid up and down the old woman's plain blue church dress and scuffed black shoes with doubt. "Do you have paperwork?" she asked, slower now, like she thought maybe the woman didn't understand English. The woman reached into her tote and pulled out a folded letter, the edges soft from many readings. "They sent me this," she said. The girl took it with 2 fingers, careful not to brush the old woman's skin, and scanned it. Her eyebrows rose. "Oh," she said. "You're E. Brown." She stood up a little straighter. "Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." The word "shortly" in this office could mean 5 minutes or 50. People streamed past the waiting chairsmen in dark suits, women in pencil skirts, all holding slim laptops and fancy coffee cups. No one spoke to the old woman. A few glanced at her cane, leaning against her knee, at the thin stockings on her brown legs, then away again, the way people look past folks at bus stops and nursing homes. On the far wall, a flat-screen TV played a business channel with no sound, pictures of tall glass buildings and smiling anchors. In the middle of it all sat Miss Etta Brown, 78 years old, who had walked slow and steady from her South Side apartment to the train, and then to this fancy LaSalle Street building because a letter had called her our valued client, and she wanted, just once, to see what that felt like. From a doorway, down the hall, a young white woman in a navy blazer watched the scene with a small frown. Claire Miller was only 26, and still knew enough at Pierce and Lamont that she said "we" when she meant "they," and her stomach twisted when partners raised their voices at staff. She had been told to wait for the brown woman from Bronzeville and bring her into the conference room, but no one had said the woman would be somebody's grandma in a thrift store dress. She walked out to the lobby, ignoring the tiny shake of the receptionist's head that said, "Let her sit." "Ms. Brown?" Claire asked. The old woman looked up, relief washing over her face like the sun coming out. "Why, yes, baby," she said. That's me." Claire smiled. "I'm Claire. I'll take you back now." As they walked down the long hall, past glass walls that showed pieces of other people's lives, someone arguing over a contract, someone laughing into a video call, Claire slowed her usual fast pace to match Miss Etta's careful steps. Up close, she could see the small gold cross on a chain at the old woman's throat, the way her hand shook just a little as she held the cane. "Did anyone offer you water?" Claire asked. "Coffee." Miss Etta gave a tiny laugh. "Child, I be brought my own," she said, patting her tote. These fancy places charge you $5 for a cup." Her eyes, though, kept flicking to the shining floors and high ceilings. "This B building always looked so different from the bus stop," she murmured. From outside, you can't see none of this. There was no bitterness in her tone, only quiet wonder. Claire opened the door to conference room B, the one the staff jokingly called the aquarium because of all the glass. Inside, A long dark table faced a wall of windows that looked out over the gray stone of older buildings and, far off, a slice of Lake Michigan. 3 men in suits stood at the far end, heads bent over a stack of folders. Logan Pierce was the tallest, his silver hair cut just right, his tie perfect. Beside him was a younger man with the same sharp jaw and lighter eyes, his son, Evan. The third man, beefy and red-faced, was a developer named Scott Harlan. Their voices dropped as Claire and Miss Etta entered. "Here she is," Claire said. "Ms. Brown." Logan turned, business smile already in place, then stalled for half a heartbeat when he saw who his client was. "Ms. Brown," he said, regaining his smooth tone. "Welcome. Please, have a seat." He gestured to the chair at the end of the table nearest the door. It was a small thing, that seat far from the head, but Claire saw Miss Etta notice. The old woman lowered herself into the chair slowly, her cane laid across her lap. She set her tote at her feet and laced her fingers together on the table to keep them from shaking. Thank you for seeing me," she said. "I don't come downtown much no more." Scott, the developer, barely glanced at her. "Let's get this done," he muttered to Logan under his breath. "Bank's breathing down my neck. We gotta close before quarter end." Logan nodded, his eyes flicking once to the window, where a glossy model of a new glass tower sat on a side shelf. Pierce Tower, the tiny letters at the base read. Claire took a chair along the wall, pad and pen ready. She had been told this was a simple closing, the last signature needed on a deal that had been in the works for over a year, a project that would tear down 3 old brick buildings on 47th Street and replace them with a shiny mix of offices and luxury living. The file said the last holdout property belonged to an E. Brown, who had owned it since 1968, but never did much with it. Buyers came and went, deals fell through, but this time her son had pushed hard. "She's ready now," he'd told them. "She understands it's just business." No one had asked her, then, to sit at the big table. They'd sent junior people to her rundown 2-flat, with glossy folders and fast words. Now, finally, she had come here on her own feet. Logan slid a thick stack of papers in front of her. The pages neat, the tabs colored. "These are the closing documents," he said in a slow, careful voice. "Once you sign these, Ms. Brown, you'll receive the full purchase price, wired to your account today. As we discussed, that's $750,000. That's life-changing money." Scott nodded, eager. "You'll be set, ma'am," he said. "No more worries about that old building falling down around you. Your son tells me you've had roof leaks for years." The way he said old building, you'd think it had never been a home, never held Sunday dinners or baby cries. Miss Etta's eyes dropped to the top page, where her name sat in neat print. Etta Louise Brown, seller. Her fingers brushed the letters like they were the face of an old friend. She knew that building on 47th better than these men knew their own reflections. She had moved into the second-floor unit as a young bride, back when Dr. King's words were still fresh in the air, and folks talked about freedom summer over kitchen tables, when the original white owner had fallen behind on taxes. Afraid of the changing neighborhood, she had offered him her savings. Every dollar she and her husband had, plus the small loan a church deacon had co-signed. He had laughed at first, then taken the money when no one else stepped up. "You'll never do nothing with it," he had said, "but good luck." She had paid it off 1 month at a time for 30 years, through shifts at the hospital laundry and nights cleaning offices, while raising 2 kids and burying 1, Ms. Brown. Logan's voice pulled her back. "Do you have any questions?" His tone said, he hoped not. In his mind, this was simple, old building for big check. To him, Etta Brown was one more tired woman cashing out. Claire watched the old woman's face. Something moved behind the glass of her Isa thought. A decision? "I want to read it," she said, her stutter stronger now, that everyone's eyes were on her. All of it? Scott sighed loud enough that it bounced off the glass walls. Ma'am, it's all standard, he said. Transfer of deed, release of claims, blah blah. We got 3 more closings today. Your son told us. Emmy's son ain't here, she cut in, surprising even herself with the sharpness of her tone. I am. Logan held up a hand to quiet Scott. There was money on the line, but there was also image. Of course, he said. Take your time. He did not look at his watch, but his foot tapped under the table. Claire stood. I can walk through it with you, Ms. Brown, if you'd like, she offered, her voice gentle. Page by page. The old woman's shoulders dropped a fraction in relief. Thank you, baby, she said. My eyes ain't what they used to be. Claire pulled a chair up beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, and began to explain in plain words what the dense paragraphs meant. As they moved, she saw things she had skimmed before. This line here, she said, frowning. It says you waive any right to future profits from this land, even if the building makes more money than they expect. Miss Etta nodded slowly. That's the P part my son L liked, she murmured. He said, Mama, you ain't gonna live long enough to see all that. Grab the cash. Her mouth twisted. She loved her son, but she also heard, under his words, the echo of so many voices that had told her she was almost done, that the time for her choices had passed. He ain't wrong about my knees, she added with a tiny smile. But he don't walk my streets like I do. She could see, clear as day, the kids playing double dutch on cracked sidewalks, the old men on milk crates outside the corner store, the way the grocery store 2 blocks over had closed and turned into another check-cashing place, as Claire read aloud about releasing all claims and assigning all rights. Miss Etta's mind slipped to a day months earlier when a letter had come in a thick envelope with heavy paper. It had been from a different office, on the north side, one she had never heard of. Dear Ms. Brown, it began, our records show that you are the sole remaining owner of the parcels at 4701-4709 South Langley. The bank that held a lien has dissolved. As such, you may be entitled to full clear title on. The words had spun in front of her eyes. Full clear title. In simple talk. The land under her building and the empty lot next door were hers. Free and clear, no one else's, in a city where land meant power. She had felt a strange, quiet weight settle in her hands. She had shown the letter to her pastor, to the young teacher who rented her upstairs unit, to the boy from church who knew about these things. They had all said the same. Miss Etta, that's a blessing. You could sell for a lot. Or you could do something. Do something. The words had rolled around in her head on long nights when she sat with her Bible open on her lap in the news, talking about shootings and school closures in the background. Do something. Her husband, gone 5 years now, had always said, if we ever get free land, Etta, don't let them take it for parking lots and condos. He had been a dreamer, a marcher. She had been the one who made sure light bills got paid. Now, somehow, both their jobs sat in front of her, in this stack of papers. Ms. Brown, Logan prodded, too smooth to sound sharp, but close. Everything look all right? His eyes slid once more to the model of Pierce Tower on the side table. Their firm had a cut of the deal. The shiny brochure on his desk showed smooth, clean people drinking lattes on a green rooftop where her building now stood. South Side, but make it safe, the tagline read. He had not written it, but he had not argued, either. To him, it was progress. Jobs, taxes. From where he sat, Miss Etta's building was an eyesore. From where she sat, it was history. She pushed the papers back an inch. Her fingers stopped shaking. I got a cute question, she said. What happens to the P people in my B building when I sign this? Scott opened his mouth. They get relocation assistance, he started. Standard package. They'll find somewhere. Ita's eyes narrowed. Somewhere where, Mr. She asked. Westside Gagiri. The S. She shook her head. I seen people move somewhere before. They don't come back. Logan shifted. Ms. Brown, change is hard, he said. But this neighborhood is going to change with or without you. This way, at least you benefit. You could help them yourself, if you wanted. Set up funds. We can refer you to a planner. $750,000 goes a long way in Bronzeville. Claire watched the old woman's face as she weighed numbers against faces. She thought of the line in the file she had half noticed before. Estimated future rental revenue, 2.5 meters per year. Over 10 years, that was. She did the math quick in her head. $25 million. After loans and costs, maybe less, but still far more than She thought of something else she had almost missed. The name on the LLC that technically held title, now Brown Legacy Holdings. She had assumed it was some fancy family company. Now, sitting beside this woman who smelled faintly of cocoa butter and laundry soap, she realized it was one person who had signed one paper in 1968 and kept paying when everyone else left. Ms. Brown, she said, voice low, you know you don't have to sell, right? You could. You could be the landlord, or partner. Scott laughed, a short, sharp sound. Partner? He echoed. No offense, ma'am, but development is complicated. You need capital, experience. You can't just be in the R room, Etta asked, cutting him off. The room went still. There it was, laid bare, the quiet thing in his tone that said old black women belonged in kitchens and pews, not boardrooms. She straightened her back. A small pain shot up from her hip, but she ignored it. Somewhere deep inside, something of her younger self stirred a girl who had marched down King Drive with a sign bigger than her shoulders, who had been shoved by a cop and stood back up. She reached into her tote again and pulled out another envelope. This one thicker, sealed, with a different letterhead. Before I came here, I went somewhere else, she said, sliding it onto the table. Logan frowned, picking it up. The top page flashed a logo he knew too well, Midwest Community Foundation, Ms. Brown, he said slowly, scanning. What is this? She folded her hands in her lap, feeling the sweat in her palms. That's the other D documents, she said. The ones they helped me draw up. Says, if I don't like this deal, I don't have to. His eyes widened as he read more. It says here you've created a land trust, he said, disbelief creeping in. Brown Community Land Trust, and you've pledged your property as the first asset. The foundation will match its value to build a youth center, a clinic, and he broke off. And a fresh food store, Miss Etta finished softly. I assigned the first Peapart L last week. They said, I unneeded my L lawyer to witness the rest. Claire's eyes flew to hers. Me, she asked, hand at her chest. Etta gave a small smile. Why you, the first one in here? T talked to me like I am mattered, she said. Figure that means something. Scott sputtered. You can't just give a prime lot to some charity, he protested. Ma'am, do you know how much money you're leaving on the table? Etta turned her head and looked him full in the face. For the first time, he seemed to really see her, not just her slow steps. I can't know exactly how much, she said. That's why they called it a transformational gift. Logan set the foundation papers down with care. His mind raced. On one hand, this ruined his deal. On the other, he could see a different headline, forming local firm guide's historic donation. He also saw, for the first time, the gap between what he had assumed about this woman and who she really was. Ms. Brown, he said carefully, you understand that by signing these trust documents, you'll be giving up control of the land to the board. You won't be able to change your mind later. Her gaze slid to the window, where a slice of sky showed between buildings. Baby, I'm 78 years old, she said. The last time I changed my mind this big, Your mama was probably in high school. She smiled, a small, sad curve. I done had my shot at this land. Time to let it feed somebody else. Claire felt a strange mix of awe and anger rise in her chest. Anger at how easily they had almost pushed Miss Etta into something that did not fit her heart. Awe at the quiet power in the woman's choice. I can witness, she said, her voice steady. If that's what you want, Ms. Brown. The old woman nodded. That's what I want. Logan looked between them, between the gleaming tower model and the worn hands on the table. It took him a long moment, but finally he gave a small nod. Then our job, he said, the lawyer in him, shifting gears, is to make sure these documents are airtight. Scott, I'm sorry, but we'll have to withdraw from your deal. Ms. Brown's instructions come first. Scott's face went red. You're kidding, he said. You're throwing away millions because some old lady. He stopped when he saw the look on Logan's face. The senior attorney had been many things in his career, sharp-driven, sometimes too cold, but he had never liked being on the wrong side of history. That old lady, he said quietly, owns the land you want, and she just made a decision. This meeting is over. Scott grabbed his folder, muttering curses as he stormed out. The glass door swung closed behind him with a soft thud. In the sudden quiet, the hum of the city below seemed louder. They moved then, each step careful. Logan called in a notary. Claire sat elbow to elbow with Miss Etta, reading each page of the trust documents out loud, making sure there were no tricks, no hidden lines. For every signature line, the notary slid the fat pen toward Etta, its gold tip gleaming under the conference room lights. Her hand shook a little less with each stroke. ETTAL. BROW on, the name she had written on job applications and rent checks and school forms now flowed onto papers that would outlive her. On the last page, above a paragraph that said, in plain words, that her property would now belong to the Brown Community Land Trust. For the benefit of current and future residents of the South Side, she paused. In that pause, the whole arc of her life seemed to sit with her. The girl who had cleaned rich folks' houses and been told not to sit on their furniture. The young mother who had watched her husband come home from the factory with his shoulders bent, but his eyes bright, talking about union meetings. The middle-aged woman who had stood at her window and watched buildings on her block burn during one long, hot summer, tears running down her face. The grandma who had held her grandson's cold hand in the hospital after a stray bullet found him on a party night. So much had been taken from her community. For once, she held something she could give back on her own terms. She signed. The pen scratched softly. Done. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the notary stamped the papers with a loud thunk, the blue ink circle blooming like a small, official flower. Congratulations, Ms. Brown, she said. You've just founded a trust. The words sounded almost too big to fit in the room. Miss Etta let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her shoulders relaxed. Thank you, she said. Claire touched her arm lightly. No, the young lawyer said, eyes bright. Thank you, for real. Logan nodded, his expression sober. The foundation will want to do a signing ceremony, he said. Press, maybe the mayor. It's a huge gift. Etta chuckled, a dry sound. Funny how now everybody wanna see me, she said. I've been walking past City Hall, 50 years. They ain't never stopped me for a picture before. A week later, the big new City Hall Annex lobby was full of cameras and polished shoes. Banners hung with the foundation's name, and words like community and partnership printed in bright colors. A table at the front held microphones. Behind it sat a row of People Foundation directors in suits. The alderman from Ita's ward, even the mayor in a dark blazer and smile. In the middle, on a padded chair with arms to help her stand, sat Miss Etta, in her best green dress and Sunday hat, the same tote at her feet. She had traded her old cane for a slightly nicer one, a gift from the teacher upstairs. "You ready, Miss Brown?" The foundation director, a kind woman named Angela, whispered. Etta nodded, though her stomach fluttered. The alderman stepped up to the mic first, talking about historic donations and public-private cooperation. His words were smooth, practiced. People clapped at the right parts. The mayor followed, praising Miss Brown as a pillar of the community now that her name might bring votes. Folks who had brushed past her at the bus stop sat in the audience, some with pride, some with curiosity. Claire sat in the second row, hands folded, a small smile on her face. She had written the press release the night before, but seeing Etta on stage felt different from typing long-time resident in a quiet office. Finally, Angela from the foundation stepped up. "We've heard from the officials," she said, her voice warm. "Now, let's hear from the woman who made all this possible." She turned to Etta. "Ms. Brown." The old woman's heart beat in her ears. Public speaking had never been her way. She was used to praying in small circles, not into microphones. But when Angela held out her hand, Etta took it and rose. A soft wave of surprise went through the crowd as she walked to the mic, cane tapping, back as straight as she could make it. She looked out and saw more faces than she had ever seen, focused on her at once. "Gee, good afternoon," she began, her voice catching on the first word. A few people shifted, uncomfortable. She took a breath and tried again. "Good afternoon," she said, stronger. "My name is Etta Brown. Some of y'all seen me before, just didn't know it." A few quiet laughs flickered. "I've been a living on 47th Street since for some of y'all was born," she went on. "I cleaned y'all's offices. I pushed y'all's mamas in wheelchairs at the hospital. I watched this city change and forget folks who don't wear suits." She paused, letting the truth sit with them. "When that letter came, saying this land was mine, I could have took the money and moved away," she said. "Ain't gon' lie, I teethed about it. But then I looked out my window," she told them, in simple words, about the kids playing in empty lots, about the mamas riding to buses for fresh fruit, about the old men who sat on milk crates because there was nowhere else to go. I remembered my husband saying, "Etta, if we ever get a peeps of this earth, don't you sell it to a nobody who don't know our songs," she said, her eyes shining. "So these nice folks in his suits asked me to sign. I asked my own questions." She smiled then, small and sure. "I decided if God was gone, trust me with clear title, I better use it to do more than fix my roof. I want my block to have a food store and a place where kids can sing and study and stay out of trouble. So I signed these paper documents today to give my land to my people, not away from them." The applause started slow, then grew until it filled the hall like rain. People stood, some wiping tears. A woman in the third row, who had once brushed past Etta in the grocery store aisle, clapped hardest of all. Cameras flashed, catching the wrinkles around Etta's eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw. For once, she did not mind the bright lights. Behind her, the mayor reached for her hand, eager to be in the photo. She let him, then made sure to pull Angela and Claire in, too. "Y'all stood by me when I was just another old black lady in the waiting room," she whispered. That night, back in her brick building on 47th, the air felt different. Kids ran up the steps with questions. "Miss Etta, they really gonna build a gym? We getting a real grocery?" Teen boys who usually walked with a hard lean gave her small, shy smiles. "You did that, Miss B," one said, nodding with respect he usually saved for bulk. Her upstairs tenant, Ms. Ramirez, brought down a pan of fresh tamales as thanks. On her couch, with her shoes off and her feet soaking in a small tub of warm water, Etta let the hum of the building wrap around her. For the first time in a long while, the voices outside sounded less like sirens and more like songs. She thought back to that first day at Pierce and Lamont, how people had stepped around her like she was a mop bucket, how the receptionist had sent her toward the service elevator, how Scott had talked past her to her son in early meetings, like she was furniture. They had looked straight through her until they realized she held the pen that could make or break their plans. Their attention had felt sharp and hungry then. The attention on her now, from her neighbors and the kids and the teacher upstairs, felt warmer, like sun on worn skin. She closed her eyes and whispered a small prayer of thanks, not for the headlines, but for the chance to leave something better than what had been handed to her. A few weeks later, Claire visited the block, trading her heels for sneakers and her blazer for a hoodie. She walked the cracked sidewalk, looking at the old building with new eyes. It was still worn, still in need of work, but now she could see what the foundation's sketched plans promised: new windows, bright paint, a sign that read Brown Community Center over the door where for rent had hung for too long. Etta met her on the stoop, cane across her lap, a plastic lawn chair under her. "Didn't think I'd see you out teeth this way," she teased. Claire laughed. "Didn't think I'd ever get to work on something like this," she said honestly. "It's better than another tax shelter." They sat a while, watching kids ride bikes up and down the street. "Claire," Etta said after a bit, her gaze on the ball, bouncing against the curb. "Remember, how they all acted in that office before A's?" Claire nodded, a little shame burning in her cheeks for her whole industry. "Yes, ma'am," she said. "I remember." Etta smiled, a small, wise curve. "Funny thing," she said. "Same faces that walked right past me in that lobby. Be calling my phone now. Miss B. Brown, can we have a meet?" She chuckled. "I tell them I'm busy. I got kids to watch and seeds to plant." Claire shook her head in admiration. "You're something else, Miss Brown," she said. The old woman shrugged. "I'm just somebody's mama with a new kind of paper," she replied. "The world only started looking at me when they figured out I could sign it." They sat there as the sun slid lower, painting the brick buildings in soft gold. Across the street, a young girl hopped on one foot, chalk in hand, drawing a hopscotch grid. When she finished, she looked up at Etta. "You gonna play?" she called, grinning. Etta laughed, the sound light. "Gee girl, these knees been through too much marching for all that," she said. "But you hop for me." The girl did, feet slapping the pavement, voice singing a rhyme older than all of them. Claire watched, tears pricking her eyes for reasons she could not quite name. She thought of all the deals she had seen where land moved from one rich man to another, while folks like this girl got pushed farther out. As the sky turned pink, Etta leaned her head back against the brick, feeling the roughness against her scalp. "You know what I learned, sitting in them F&C chairs?" she asked quietly. Claire turned toward her. "What's that?" she asked. Etta's gaze was steady, full of years and streets and quiet Sundays. "That people will look right past your skin, your age, your working shoes, like you ain't on nothing," she said, "until the minute they realize you, the one holding the pen, that decides their future. Then they wanna smile and say your name." She lifted her chin, eyes on the sky. "So I decided, I ain't gone waste my writing on folks who only see me for my signature. 'Cause our real respect is shown long before the documents ever touch your hands."